Okay, my name is Milen Dyankov. I work for a company called Liferay, and what I'm going to show you today is our new project called WeDeploy. One thing that I always wanted to do as a speaker is to get some feedback of like how I am doing as a speaker. And that's why I actually decided to build an application for that, which you can see on this URL. So if you care, now this is your excuse to actually use laptops and mobile phones and tablets and whatever that you have to during the talk. So you can go to that URL, or for those of you who are watching that on YouTube, you can also go on that URL and you will see the app. And the app looks like this. Yeah, you can see it. So you have there talks in progress. There's nothing yet there. So now I'm going to go as a speaker and I'm just going to say, start my talk. And now as an attendee, you can actually click on that talk and provide some feedback. So do that. Again, that's the URL. And meanwhile, I'm going to use my time to tell you how actually this application came into life and how long does it take to build and actually deploy in the cloud an application like this. So we at Liferay have been already for like 10 years focusing on open source and making developers' lives easier. And back in the old days when portals were as much as a buzzword as microservices are today, we were making the developer's life easier by providing an open source solution that was easier to work with without compromising on all the functionality, the business functionality that the big high price tag products had. Things obviously have changed since then. We've invested a lot into new technologies, and from this screen you can see that there's a lot of front-end work going on. And WeDeploy is the latest addition to that stack that Liferay offers these days. So what is WeDeploy about? It's about building and deploying stuff faster without you getting to know too much of infrastructure, too much of configuration. You just build your app, whether that's a mobile app that requires a backend or a front-end app or an enterprise app, and you get it in production in the cloud as soon as possible. And what does that mean? So here's my app. Hope you can see that. It's a very simple HTML and JavaScript app. This particular one uses Polymer. So I'm now running this thing on my local host just to make sure it works properly. So yeah, I can sign in, and you can see that I can sign in with a stupid fake account, and I can't do pretty much anything else. The reason is Polymer components have this notion of behaviors, and this is how my behaviors are implemented. So I have a mock behavior that logs in with a fake user, and I also have behaviors for my components that are supposed to get and store data that are simply not implemented. So, but that's good enough for me to actually see the UI. By the way, this application proves that I'm not a web designer. So sorry for the user interface, but it kind of works. So what does it take to deploy that on the cloud? Well, with WeDeploy, all it takes is a configuration file, which I'm going to create from a template, which is called wedeploy.json. And in that file, I'm just going to say I want to have a container called UI, which is using the hosting image. So once I have that, I can actually build my application. That is just to get rid of the source stuff that I don't really want to go in production. And then I'm going to do WeDeploy. And I say I want to create a project called TalkBack. Now, WeDeploy is going to ask me to log in, which I'm going to do using my web browser. And the moment I do this, I can go to the WeDeploy console. The deployment process continues, and you can see on the end of the screen the deployment activity. It just created a container called UI based on that configuration file that I've provided. I can see the logs, but moreover, I can just click and go to my application. So this is my application running in the cloud. It still does the same stupid thing. You have like fake authentication and cannot store things. So what else you can do now? We can fix the logging. How do we fix that? Well, first of all, we need to change the behavior. We need to now provide a real logging behavior. So I'm also going to use that from a template, and I'm going to just say, okay, here is my real logging behavior. It uses a microservice, if you want to call it this way. These days, everything's microservice. That is at this URL, authentication, talkback, WeDeploy IO. And then I use some JavaScript here that says, well, log in with GitHub. This is what you do. And if you log in with Google, use just the same service, right? So that's basically replacing, which I'm doing right now, my mocking components with my real components. So let's just disable and enable this one, save the thing, and then I can go again to build my stuff, which again I just do to get rid of the stuff I don't want to, and then I'm just going to run WeDeploy again. And if you look into the console, you'll see that again the activity, my container is being refreshed, my service is being refreshed, and a new service has been deployed. So if I now go back to my application, I can reload my application, and then I can try to log in. And surprise, surprise, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because we changed the UI, but we didn't provide anything for actual authentication. So let's do that. Let's create that magical authentication service. Well, I'm just going to create a folder called auth, and in which I'm going to create another deployment descriptor, which is WeDeploy JSON. And I say this is an authentication, and I provide all my OAuth keys there. So this is how you log in with Google. This is how you log in with GitHub. And then I go to my auth folder, and I do WeDeploy again. Now, looking back in the console, what you're going to see is there's another service being created for me, which is the authentication service that I'm authenticating against. Okay, and then if I reload my application and I click on a GitHub icon, you can see I'm automatically logged in because I'm constantly logged in at GitHub. All right. Well, but still, I can't save any data, right? I can't do anything because my deployment, my storage is still fake. It's still empty methods, right? So let's fix that. So to do that, we need to change these 4 behaviors that are describing how particular components behave. Those are storage related components for talks and comments. So I'm just going to enable those and disable the mock ones. This is the place where I do this. And then I need to also provide the actual behaviors. Okay, so this is just having a look at one of those. So you will see here that we have a function that basically gets the data, get the current talk, and we have a function ready that we can use watch to basically be notified every time something in a data container changes. And you can obviously do save and update and all these things. It's basically a NoSQL database as a service that is provided for you. So how do we deploy that thing? Well, before we deploy it, we actually need to create the actual service. So how do we create the actual data service? Well, the same thing. We deploy the JSON, we have the WeDeploy JSON file in where we just say we want a data container. Right? And then we can have this API JSON file which describes how do we store data. So we have a bunch of URLs here and say, well, for this URL you can do get, for this you can do post, for this you can do whatever. If I want to be more verbose, I can actually specify a security rules in here and just particular people do particular things and so forth. So when I do this now, I need to first update my UI because I changed it again, providing the actual storage behavior, which I'm going to do exact same way I did before, basically rebuilding my application and calling WeDeploy again, and you can see on the right the service being redeployed. Then I go again to my data folder with these 2 files in it, and then I'm going to deploy that. And once I do that, yeah, I'm going to have another service running, which is the data service. And now, actually, that's all I need to do to be able to store data. So if you go to the web application and actually type something in and click Add Talk, then you have the talk already there. There's no comments, obviously. At the time I was doing this, you can enable the talk, and you can get to the point where display it. Now, you may realize we use these prefixes for internal services. Those are only available in your project. In order to be able to actually access this with a friendly URL from the internet, you can use this custom domain thing to assign your custom domain name to your service so that people can actually access it with your domain name from the internet. And that's pretty much it. This is how much it took to build this application, put it in the cloud, so you guys can use it. There are a lot more things that you can do with WeDeploy. If you go to the WeDeploy GitHub account and just search for a demo, there are 31 demos already there. So they're running different types of applications, Java applications, pre-ready applications. So you can look into that to see what else you can do with WeDeploy. It's not limited to all. Those are the services that we give you out of the box, but it's a lot more than you can actually do. So that is pretty much what I wanted to tell you today. Thank you, and let's see if there were any comments. So I'm going to look at my speaker. Boom. Oh, just one person. Thank you for the thumb up, whoever that person is. So if you want to learn more about WeDeploy, if you have any questions, we have 3 minutes. And we also have a booth downstairs, so feel free to visit us and talk to us and explain your use case, and we may help you decide whether WeDeploy is the thing for you. Okay, thank you. Questions? No questions. Okay, so I see you downstairs then. Thank you, guys.